Jesus doesn't even follow the requirements to be the Messiah. The requirements to be a Messiah is that the Jews will go back to Israel. There'll be a big war. Something will happen. He'll be a descendant of King David. You said 500 people discovered Christ. What happens to them? They all die. Who raised Islam out here? You're the one who raised him. Now, if you're going to jump into the kitchen, it gets hot. I don't want to debate with Karl Marx. He's dead. I want to debate or talk with you. Okay, so is Jesus, we're still discussing. No, Jesus is alive. He rose from the dead. That's different from all right. Then where is he now? Those are, by the way, who I believe to be God, which we claim are mythological characters. I spent most of my life reading Buddhist philosophy, and I have absolutely no evidence that it's true. It's more me trying to come to terms with the concept of death. On some level, I hope that there is no afterlife, because this is hard. You know, one pastor, 4 religions. Watch as Cliffe Knechtle faces a Jew, Muslim, Hindu and Buddhist, and manages to set Christianity apart as the ultimate truth in all 4 debates. Make sure to stick to the end for some of the most thought-provoking debates you'll ever witness. Leave your thoughts in the comments below and enjoy the video. I know there's evil in me. Okay, so the question is, how am I made right with a morally perfect, holy God? You ask him. Do you say, and then does he forgive you? Yes. How do you know that? I know that because that's what the actual Bible says. The actual Bible says, yeah, and the actual Bible talks about lambs being sacrificed. Right? And we don't have to temple anymore. We don't have to do it. Everyone knows this, yeah. But what's the whole point of a lamb being sacrificed? Why was blood shed? The physical presence that it was there. That doesn't exist today. That's why it's so much, that's why back then people believed in God so much easier than we do now. Everyone here, half the people here don't, half people in this circle don't, because it's struggle and it's hard, because it's not that present, it's not there today. And it's much more of a struggle. It's not because somebody died. It doesn't say Jesus doesn't even follow the requirements to be the Messiah. The requirements to be Messiah is that the Jews will go back to Israel. There'll be a big war. Some stuff will happen, and eventually we all come and he'll rise up. He'll be a descendant of King David. How is he? Okay, listen, a descendant, because in the Jewish faith comes descendant of your tradition, and you restore past through your father Jesus, who's his father. Okay, so here's basically how I'm different from my wonderful, awesome Jewish friends, in 6th tradition, Moses, Hebrew prophets. That's truth. And when I ask them, what's the evidence that Moses and tradition are true? I'm scared by the answers that I get. The reason that I follow Jesus Christ is because of his sinless life, his amazing ethical teachings, the Sermon on the Mount, his incredible death, forgiving enemies, and then his resurrection. His resurrection sets Christ apart from Moses, Isaiah, Muhammad, Siddhartha, Gautama Buddha, the avatars of Hinduism. His resurrection is unique. That's why I seriously would encourage you to check out Jesus. Does that make sense? You didn't tell me what the explanation was. What do they tell you? They tell me it's our tradition. It's our heritage. It's our heritage, we can trace it back. And also, they also tell you that, and also first off, Moses was not sinless. Moses killed a person, right? Exactly, he is the greatest prophet of all time. We both agree. No, I think Jesus is greater than Moses, he said, but he says, he's not a prophet. Jesus entitled for the Bible, that in the day of the father of king, the father of the father, the biggest in Jesse, you see the right in the middle, mightiest thing you shall see, he walked down far from, I don't know, Jesse's sin. The father of King David. No, it says specifically he did not sin. No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. Jesse didn't live a sinless life, and obviously David didn't. That dude was one royal sinner. No, David did not. But didn't Jesse sin? Okay, but Jesus Christ did not. That sets him apart as unique, as different. Muhammad sinned, and I respect Muhammad. Okay, it's not like I dump on Muhammad. In fact, I love his one of his 5 pillars. Give alms to the poor. I agree with him totally. In John chapter 8, Jesus looks in the face of his enemies and says, which one of you can prove me guilty of sin? His enemies are silent. A fine Jewish man, the Apostle John, who lived with Christ very closely for 3 years in 1 John, could write, in him is no sin. So that's what the eyewitnesses say. He didn't sin, which is kind of weird because all the rest of us sin, but not Jesus. So that demands respect. It doesn't mean he's God, obviously, but it demands respect. And then when he claims to be God, and then backs it up with an historical resurrection, Wow, I really got to take this guy seriously. It's pretty impressive. Jesus has not filled any of the requirements to be the Messiah. Good, you're right. He did not fulfill the kingly. No, he fulfilled the suffering servant prophecies like Isaiah 53. He was the suffering servant who was crushed for our iniquities. But he did not, you're absolutely right, he did not fulfill the kingly messianic prophecies. He said that he would return a second time. And when he returns, it will not be as a baby born in a manger in Bethlehem. It'll be as the all-powerful God. And there will be a day of judgment, and there will be a heaven and a hell. So you see now the question is, yeah, but Cliff, come on. Where does the Bible say that the Messiah is going to come twice? Good question. It doesn't say he's going to come twice, but it also doesn't say he's just going to come once or 5 times. It is silent. So the Old Testament is silent regarding how many times Messiah is to come. Obviously, what Jesus is claiming is he comes the first time to fulfill the suffering servant prophecies like Isaiah 53. But when he comes a second time, it'll be to fulfill the kingly messianic prophecies. And there will be a day of judgment, and it will be power, not someone getting nailed to a cross. I know people that know Hebrew because I've learned it from my father before that, from my father before that. Good. Right? Passed down for tradition from Sinai. Right, at Sinai, Jesus was not mentioned. Everything was given up there and brought down. Yeah. So you said 500 people discovered Christ. What happens then? They all die, 500. So do you understand what you're saying is that we cannot ask these 500 people what happened? Did you see this? No. Because they're not there anymore and we don't know who they are. But with 3 million people at at Sinai who received the Torah from God, I can trace that back. I can trace myself back to those 3 million people with specific names all the way back to Moshe, back to Moses. So how is Jesus Christ more reliable than what the original is? What is based off? I would encourage you to put your faith in Jesus Christ, because the evidence is he died and really rose from the dead. He lived out the Torah magnificently. So the evidence is he's consistent and he's reliable. He was dead and he rose from the dead. So you can trust him. He didn't slam Moses. He agreed that Moses was inspired by God. I am a follower of Christ. I worship a Jew. I worship a Jew. Jesus was a Jew, not a Gentile. So all the anti-Semitism that has gone on in the name of Christianity is a farce, obviously, because a Christian is someone who worships a Jew. So if somebody says, I believe in Jesus and I'm going to go into a synagogue and blow Jews away, major hypocrisy, major breakdown in here, major. If you're a Christian, you worship a Jew, you believe that God became a human being and he was a Jew. So anti-Semitism in the name of Christianity is a violent contradiction. Obvious. I think you all know me. I stepped out here and I simply asked these 2 gentlemen to please, anytime you're trying to kind of, spread Christianity or talk about it, if you mention the word Islam, you kind of be gentle with it. Because I believe that both of them were kind of affecting Islam indirectly, because they're kind of reinforcing the stereotypical Muslims, bad terrorists, polygamists, all these. So I was employing them, and so we got too deep in the conversations, and Mr. Cliff, right? Just Cliff, you informed me that you asked me a question. You asked me a question. Should I, as a Muslim, believe a man who was born after 500 years of the disciples? And according to you, I did not answer your question, but what I said, I believe it goes back further that Muhammad was mentioned in the Torah. You disagreed with me. You disagreed, and then you resumed the question, and you still assume that I didn't answer it. I brought the evidence that Muhammad is mentioned in name in Hebrew in Solomon, Song of Solomon. And I simply wish of you to read it out loud, because and it's right here actually. Sure. I'll read it out loud. It's Song of Solomon in Hebrew. In Hebrew. No, I'm not going to read it in Hebrew. Hebrew matters. Hebrew is everything. No, Hebrew is not everything. Language is language. Difference is on in the Hebrew. You got to be careful. But know something. Arabic names. Every Hebrew scholar I've talked to, Arabic names think that that's Muhammad. Arabic names have meaning. You're pulling it up on the internet. If you take, oh, no. That's not I have the similar name and I know what it means. Don't tell me it's internet. No, that's me. We're glad you're here. We love you. We respect you. You are totally wrong when you say that the Song of Solomon talks about Muhammad. Sir, Muhammad wasn't born till 570. It's just like Jesus was mentioned in the Old Testament, wasn't born. Jesus is not mentioned in the Old Testament as an historical person. Why don't you read it out loud in Hebrew? No. Didn't you hear what I said? Jesus is not mentioned in the Old Testament as an historical person. Something about the lady who's praying. She steps on the snake, right? I mean, I think it's not saying Jesus. Jesus is not mentioned in a document that is written before his birth. I'm here talking about Muhammad though. I'm not okay. Like, if he's not mentioned, then my bad. But I have here a verse in the Hebrew language when it got okay. I don't know how to read. But there is, you don't know how to read it. I don't know. But I know that the word is there. Read it out loud. All right, I know it says Muhammad. Here it is. Why? Why did you turn away? You're here to help me. No, I'm not here to play games. I'm not playing games. Yes, you are. You're playing games? I think you're blinded, sir. You're blinded because you're playing games. No, I'm not. Fine, I'll read the passage. Solomon 50:16, right in Hebrew. No, I'm going to read it in English for you, and no, it's not. You took the name. His mouth is sweetness itself. He is altogether lovely. This is my lover. This, my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. There is no mention of Muhammad in Song of Solomon 16. Why does it say we call him Muhammad in the and he's not talking about an historical Muhammad? It's not even referring to him, sir. You're playing a little semantic game. It's not game. You want to play a game? We'll go play basketball. Okay. I'm not out here to play semantic games. Why do you refuse to look at it? You're afraid. I won't look at anything. I just read it for you. You want me to look at it? I'll read it. Look at it and read it in the Hebrew, and then see the translation and see what happens. That's all I'm asking of you. I'm not asking you the impossible. Read it in the Hebrew and see the translation and see what happens. So let's move on to, okay, we'll keep talking. How can we trust the Quran? Why is it reliable? And we'll compare it right to the Bible. This is the same example right here. This is a joke. A joke. Yes, it is. It's a total flaw. You're calling the Hebrew language, is that what happened? The way, the linguistic trick you're playing is intellectually dishonest. The Hebrew is not talking about an historical person. You still haven't read it, by the way. I did read it. No, you didn't read it out loud. Oh, I'm not going to read it out loud. If you want to read it out loud, go right ahead. I read out loud. I already did that verse out of the NIV, a very accurate translation of the Hebrew. But then it's not accurate. Yes, it is accurate. The name Muhammad means the one who is altogether lovely, which is the thing that you read. Yeah, but then when you translate the name Muhammad to altogether, you miss the name Muhammad. If you became the masters in the biblical religion, you will never recognize it was Muhammad because the name was taken. You don't have masters in it. Do you have a masters in it? Hebrew. Apparently, man, he doesn't know that you don't. He's laughing at me, looking away. They're playing a game. Why is this a game? Sir, you got to learn to defend your faith better than stringing some words that don't mean Muhammad and acting like they do. That's talking about a lover in a love poem. The Song of Solomon. It's written 1,000 years at least before Muhammad ever lived. I don't know. It is true that I don't know Hebrew, but I know very well that Muhammadim, the M in the end of the Hebrew language refers to a person who is highly respected and to be a prophet. It's just like Abuhim. But hey, you know Hebrew. Now, let me ask you, who raised Islam out here today? Here. Yeah, who? It's the same concept. Who raised Islam out here? Did I do it or did you? Not me. Yes, you did. We were talking about atheism and agnosticism. You stood up here and raised Islam. So stop accusing us of raising Islam. I have told you that I respect you. I love you indirectly. No, absolutely not. Every time you're the one who raised it. You're now, if you're going to jump into the kitchen, it gets hot. You're not listening to me. Yeah, you're not listening to me. You're not listening to me. You're not listening to me either. You are enforcing the stereotype. I'm not enforcing anything. You've interrupted and you're talking nonsense. Like bad. How they're terrorists every time you talk about it. I never said that. We said the opposite. Muslims are not all terrorists. You mentioned how Muhammad was violent and you did not give Muhammad was violent. No, he Shura Nura and Muhammad writes, kill the infidel. That's violence and he never carried a sword. Never, you're right. Muhammad attacks you. We don't want to talk about Islam. Why are you forcing us to talk about it and then accusing us of raising? I'm simply asking you to recognize people, and no, you're not asking. You ask the question. I begin to answer and you interrupt me. You're not asking, I did read it. Okay. But you didn't read it out loud, and you're still not, I'm not going to read it out loud. I'm here to convince you because it's a false translation. I'm not going to read it. Go through every synagogue. I bet you know some rabbis in a lot of synagogues. Why don't you go ask them, and they will tell you the same thing. I dare you. I got many rabbi friends. I meet with them on a regular basis, and they are intellectually honest. The Old Testament never once talks about Muhammad. Never once. And neither does the New Testament. It doesn't talk about Muhammad. And make sure you ask many. By the way, we respect you and we love you, and we're glad you're here in the United States. So don't lump us into a stereotype. No, you're not listening. We celebrate Muslims being here in the United States. We are here to defend you. But when you're intellectually dishonest and when you lie, that's what we're going to call you on it. And you haven't read, I still respect you. You haven't read it. I just did read it. You gave it to me and I read it. Read it out loud. I'm not going to read it out loud. Difference in the world. You can read it out loud. Oh, absolutely. I already did. That's what it says in the Hebrew. When it got translated, they took the name Muhammad, who means altogether lovely. And they say this guy who's altogether lovely. So everybody in the world right now is not going to know that Muhammad was here. Could you please comment on that? No. Why do you trust? No, because you can't. Oh, it's easy, sir. Any Hebrew scholar could tell you that Song of Solomon 50. 16 is not talking about a dude who was born in 570 AD and lived till about 632 AD. Muhammad, it's not talking about that. It was written 1,000 years before. So, it's not talking about Muhammad. It's not. And you're intellectually dishonest if you say that. The same way I would be intellectually dishonest if I said the Old Testament mentions Jesus of Nazareth. No, it does not, guys. The Old Testament was written to say it's before Christ. The Old Testament never mentions the word Jesus. Google Solomon and it would be there. Sir, your Muslim friend wants you over there. Why don't you go and have a good day over there? Solomon 50:16 in Hebrew and you'll see it. All right, think of me. I'm crazy. But just make sure you have time, for we are glad you're here in the United States. Welcome. It's good to have you and I appreciate it. Answered me. I have answered you. You can communicate truth through myth. Jesus communicates truth through parable. Parables are not historical records of anything. They're stories, and Jesus communicates truth through stories. And that's what the Vedas and Upanishads are. They're stories. It's not a historical claim. It's a story. It's a myth. But truth is being communicated is the claim. Am I right or wrong? No. You're basically saying that what I believe to be God is a myth. No. What I'm saying is the avatars, okay, I'm sorry, are communicated in mythological, you refer to narrative. The avatars are not space-time people. Who exactly are these avatars you're referring to? May I ask, Arjuna, like Shiva, Brahma, and you're saying those are, by the way, who I believe to be God, which you claim are mythological characters. No, no, no. They're appearing on earth, them being seen mim, is not an historical event. It's not the claim that these guys really walk the planet. It's more that they are spirits that exist and they're the truth. And that's fine. I got no problem with that. But let's be honest. It's not a claim of historicity. It's a claim that these spirits are true. Guess what? I've never seen God, but I believe God is true. But I would never say to you, God the Father walked on earth. No, God the Father walking on earth never occurred. It's not an historical event. Jesus Christ, God in human form, walked on earth, right? Okay, so the avatars of Hinduism are not historical people who are born in a town live. And then we have the historical record and their mythological figures, but the point communicated through myth, right? But you then seem to be saying that truth is true. And we must this to be sort of, I mean, that was also a long time free. Well, actually, they're mostly similar, but in key details they do differ. Yes, oh, come on. Well, all religions in the world promote good life. I mean, if I follow any religion in the world, either society would be fine. We just suck because we don't. All right? But obviously, Jesus is saying there are not many gods. Jesus stuck to the monotheism of Judaism. There's one God. He repeated the Shema of Israel. Hear, O God, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. Now, obviously, that's not what Hinduism teaches, right? So how do you, decide which one is more true? Well, that's what you got to do. You got to study the Vedas and Upanishads, and you got to ask, okay, is there evidence that supports the truth claims? And then you got to read the Gospels and ask yourself, is there evidence to support the truth claims of Christ? And what is the evidence that supports the true claims of Christ? His sinless life, his incredible ethical teachings, his death on a cross, loving and forgiving his enemies, and his resurrection from the dead, those 4 points. All right. But then that is equivalent to saying over the history of time, people who lived the way the Upanishads teach would cause just as good, good being and good life. How is it that? And secondly, why do you say that he was completely sinless? What exactly is sin? Why are you saying, you're claiming that he is sinless is like saying that I have my own idea of sin and he's adhering to it. Therefore, it's your own idea and not actually Jesus's. Fascinating point. No, sin is not something that I make up. Sin, justice, goodness flow from the character of God. And according to both the Torah and the New Testament, the goodness of God is revealed in the commandments. Do not murder. Love. Do not lie. Speak the truth. Do not covet. Celebrate with another person all the talents they have. Do not be jealous or envious. Build other people up. So sin is saying, God, your definition is wrong. My definition is right. Isn't that circular argument though? Like saying, I know that Jesus was sinless because God said so, and what God says is sinless. Therefore, there's no basis for what is, and is not sinless except for your own decision. No, the reason I answered you was because you said, Cliffe, you're just making it up. No, I'm not making it up. You read the Old Testament, the 10 Commandments, the Decalogue in Exodus 20. Can I interrupt you for a second? You're saying you knew what sin is, and is not based on Jesus' word. But you claim that Jesus lived a sinless life before you even had him. While he's living his life, you had no real idea of what sin is or is not. So how do you know that he lived a sinless life before he even told you? And if it's after he told you, then he can just suit it to whatever he did, and therefore he would be sinless. Jesus was a Jew, right? And as a Jew, he believed that the 10 Commandments were from God, from his Father. And he lived up to those 10 Commandments perfectly. That was his definition of sinless, all right? And if I, for example, believed in something else, say, I don't know, like 5 commandments that I come up with or some other person comes up with, and I perfectly and I strongly believe that that is the truth, and I perfectly adhere to it to my entire life. I can claim that I have been sinless, and so can other people who, use that same argument. Just because he was Jew and he followed through what he believed does not make him sinless any more than me following through what I believe would make him sinless, right? But Jesus, as a Jew, insisted the 10 Commandments are the law of God.
Right.
And then he lived up to that incredibly high ethical standard. And if I insist, so what you're saying is if I insist on some incredibly high ethical standard, which again is we don't even know what that high standard is, or if it even is ethical, and then I just, obey these laws that someone made, then you're claiming that I'm equally sinless as Jesus. I can promise you that if you espouse a very high ethical standard and then live up to that high ethical standard perfectly, I will respect you highly. That's why I respect Gandhi as much as I do, because Gandhi lived up to a very high ethical standard very, very well, didn't he? But then that's why I respect Gandhi. If Gandhi would have gone around with a racist attitude, if Gandhi would have gone around knocking people's legs out from underneath them, cut him off at the knees, I would not respect Gandhi as much as I do. We're coming back to again the argument of what is a high ethical standard, because we don't know what sin is or is not without these high standards that we aspire to, and we're making up these standards or something. Good, my argument is that you understand by exercising your conscience in a rational, responsible way. You have a very good understanding of what is right and wrong. That is why if I go up to this guy and smack him in the face, you're going to say, whoa, what are you doing? And if I go up to this guy and steal his backpack, you're going to say, whoa, what are you doing? And if I exhibit a racist attitude towards you, you're going to say, whoa, time out, what are you doing? See, you have a conscience that ties you into those 10 Commandments, that ties you into the teachings of Christ, the same way I do, the same way everybody does here. I don't think you need to have a PhD in the Bible to know that the rape of a woman is absolutely wrong. I think you've got a conscience that will inform you very quickly that rape is wrong. All right. So you're saying that, for example, him you stealing the backpack would be kind of as wrong, right? I think you would believe that wrong, but not necessarily. Good. Property again is a concept that is inherently selfish, for example. Okay, we disagree. And I'm just not necessarily my point here. But say communism, for example. No, you speak for yourself though. Come on now. I don't want to debate with Karl Marx. He's dead. I want to debate or talk with you. Okay, so is Jesus. We're still discussing. No, No, Jesus is alive. He rose from the dead. That's different from all, right? Then where is he now? I don't see him alive. Where is he now? He's in heaven. All right. So he's going to come back a second time and geez. All right. So, well, you know what? Okay. That point is obviously not going to get anywhere, and I'm going to get irritated by it. But if you want to shut down and get irritated, that's your decision. All right. Fine. What are we arguing again? Because you seem to be, I think we're done. You don't know where we're talking about. I think we're done. No. I don't think we're done yet. Oh, okay. Well, then give it to me. What are you thinking? All right. So your issue of theft here, you're assuming that that's wrong, right? Yes, but that's in the case of our society. For example, if communism worked out well and that proletarian dictatorship actually, passed through and moved on to the rest of the stages of Karl Marx's supposed philosophy, would property and things like that would not exist, and there would be no such thing as you taking it from him. You're just utilizing it for whatever you need. It's not necessarily theft. No offense to Adam Smith, no offense to Karl Marx, my view of stealing his backpack is being wrong, has nothing to do with communism, has nothing to do with capitalism, no offense to the US Supreme Court. It has nothing to do with the dictates of the US Supreme Court. The reason that I'm convinced that stealing his backpack is wrong is not because him having a backpack is selfish. Rather, he's a human being created in the image of God, which means he has dignity. Because he has dignity, I need to respect him. And one of the ways to respect him is to respect the property that belongs to him. Therefore, stealing his backpack is wrong. You seem to be believing that property is an inherent right to people. That people have a right to property. Then that property is something that belongs to me. Why can't you say that everything belongs as a society to someone and everything belongs to society? Everything belongs to a group of people. For example, a family, you can own stuff and it's not really theft if people utilize it. I'm saying this idea of theft is not necessarily wrong because the idea of theft would not necessarily exist in a different society. Okay, so a good point. So is this what you're saying? Right and wrong are determined by culture, by society in a sense. Yes. Okay. Then I'm going to give you an illustration. Nuremberg trials 945 to 1949. 24 Nazi war criminals are defended by Nazi lawyers. The Nazi lawyers informed the judges at the Nuremberg trial, you have no right to condemn these Nazi war criminals because they simply were carrying out orders. They simply were doing what their culture taught them to do. The trial shut down because those brilliant Nazi lawyers were on to something. If it's true that culture defines right and wrong, there is no way for the Allies to judge the Nazi war criminals because it was their culture. Who taught them that the Holocaust was good? They were just following orders. Robert Jackson, the counsel for the American contingent, stood up and said, there is a law above the law. And because of the law above the law, we can judge these Nazi war criminals as doing something wrong. And the trial continued. And those 24 Nazi war criminals were judged as having done something wrong. Right? Does that make sense to you? Yeah, that makes sense. That just because someone else culturally believes that what they think is right is not necessarily entitled them to do whatever it is they want in nation's law, whatever it is they want. In the sense that, for example, I have my beliefs. And as a society, the United States has a set of beliefs. If they're not going to carry them, if they're not willing to do it enough, the cause for example, Nazi belief. I don't see what necessarily I should be sure that religious analysis my beliefs all the sense of reasonable hope. They in your belief, okay, the people who are punishing are the ones who have been put into authority by society, and society as a whole decided that that is wrong, and as such we decide to judge them based on what we decided is right or wrong, and how is that necessitate a higher law. My experience is that people can follow their conscience instead of following their culture. And we have the utmost respect for people who follow their conscience, which ties them into a law above the law, and they critique their culture. And we have the utmost respect for those people, don't we? Our laws, or even though I guess you can say culture, but our constitution, for example, was an intellectual effort, not some kind of just saying, I'm going to appeal to this natural law concept. It's intellectual effort to say this is what I believe, using my own conscience is right, and I'm going to write it down on paper and make it the supreme law of the land, and that is what we decide to follow consciously, not based on culture. You don't think the US Constitution was based on natural law and divine law? That's what they claim technically, but does not mean that it's not a conscious effort. Oh, is it definitely a conscious effort? Absolutely. So what was your response to the reason for no nessus, not your argument, for the natural law existing? I said that it doesn't need to be there. And you seem to be thinking that it does. I think every one of us here understands from the illustration that I gave from Nuremberg that indeed there is a law above the cultural law. If my culture says that black people are 3/5 the value of white people, I can follow my conscience and I can follow my reason and figure out that no, that's an unjust law. That was Dr. Martin Luther King's argument in his letter from a Birmingham jail in Alabama. He wrote to the white Christian ministers in Birmingham, Alabama, and he said, guess what, fellas? The law of the land that you are commanding me to follow, that black boys sit at the back of the bus, that black folk have to drink from different water fountains. Well, guess what? The law of God is above the law of the land, the law of this culture. And you guys as Christian ministers, even though you're white, should realize that those laws are racist and they're wrong. So from his prison cell in Birmingham, Alabama, Dr. Martin Luther King was appealing to a law above the law of the culture, the law of the land. And I think that makes a ton of sense if all of us here are willing to think about it. Guess what, guys? The only way there can be a law above the cultural law is if there is some type of God who creates and defines that value of justice that that law expresses. So what you're saying is that by using my conscience, I'm somehow going to arrive at this natural law. Correct. And how is that different from saying that is simply my reason dictating what I decided to be just and not necessarily written by God? Well, you can do that. But I don't think you can live it out, because if you're going to live out what you say you believe, you're going to have to acknowledge that if I steal his backpack or if I make a racial slur against you, that's not wrong in any absolute sense. Maybe it's wrong from your perspective, but obviously from my perspective, it's right. So your moral relativism crosses you out of the picture when it comes to making an objective moral decision, because everything's relative. I would agree that what you did is wrong, and I would agree that from your perspective, what you did might be entirely right. But that's not going to stop me from punishing you, because that is what I believe is right, and I'm going to fight for my beliefs. But if it's relative, why are you going to fight for your beliefs? Because that is what my belief is. If it's relative, it's not real. Okay, relative. Why would you fight for something that's not real? Why would you claim that just because it's relative, it's not real? Because that's the definition. The definition of relative is it's not real. It's simply a personal prejudice ethic. Relativity means that what can be true for me can be equally true for you. It's not true. Yes, it is. It is not true. Have you taken a modern physics class recently, by the way? Just wondering. You cannot say that it's not true if you believe that it's relative. In the area of ethics and morals, if you're going to say it's relative, then you can't say it's really true or really false. You have to say, from my perspective, it's true or false. But my perspective is just my own personal prejudice and bias, my own cultural prejudice. You cannot say, if you're a relativist, it's really evil that a young child be abused, and I'm saying it's not entirely true. I have formulated, using my own thoughts, a belief system that I believe will lead to just justice and whatnot, and I will follow said belief regardless of what your perspective is.
Yeah.
And your perspective, if you believe what you say is it's all relative, justice is totally relative. Well, if justice is totally relative, why on earth are you going to enforce your definition of justice upon other people who disagree with you? Because from my perspective, you are unjust. Yeah, but if you believe that's relative, that justice is relative, what way do you get off being so arrogant as to enforce your definition of justice on me? Because I am confident in my belief that what I believe is to be the correct belief. You're a confident, arrogant twit then? Yes, I am arrogant. Everything you do is based on arrogance. If you do, absolutely not. All right, if you are convinced that God created this man with dignity and value, then you have a basis for understanding that to murder him, to steal from him, is absolutely wrong. It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with my opinion. It has nothing to do with my culture or my cultural superiority. Nothing. Nothing. It is totally wrapped up in the fact that he has innate value. He has innate dignity, and therefore I am responsible to respect him, not to denigrate him. Go ahead and define dignity for me. If you're a relativist, why are you wasting your time talking to me? And if by reason I can argue and convince the other person to share my perspective, fine. But if they don't choose to share your perspective, they're not wrong. You're not right because it's all relative. They think they're not wrong. I think they're wrong. Yeah. But you are enlightened enough to acknowledge that everything is relative. So because you're so intelligent that you realize that everything is relative, you understand that ultimately nobody's right and nobody's wrong. It's all relative, which is also why nobody's going to go to hell or heaven because of what they do. But as long as I'm alive, I'm going to live the way I deem right. Okay, good. I've always felt, isn't God's love actually pretty conditional? No. Like on you behaving a certain way, or particularly not behaving certain ways that some would view as not immoral, such as being gay. But God may view as, not worthy of salvation. Nobody is worthy of salvation. I am not worthy of salvation. That's what sets Jesus Christ apart from every other major world religion. Every major world religion says, get your act together and be worthy of salvation. And Jesus Christ says, you're never going to be worthy of salvation because you've sinned. Now, grace is God's undeserved, unconditional love, offer of forgiveness for whatever it is that I've done wrong. Now, if I reject that offer of forgiveness because God created the universe and is the ultimate judge, He's going to hold me responsible for the wrong that I've done. That's why if I reject Christ, I will be judged by God for the wrong that I've done, and I will go to hell and experience separation from God. But if I humble myself and acknowledge, yes, I've done wrong, have mercy on me, a sinner, He promises to forgive me. For God so loved the world that He gave His only Son, that whoever, not the good people, not the better people, not the morally superior people, whoever believes in Him should not perish but have eternal life. Does that make sense? Yes. What's the problem with it? I'm wondering specifically on the issue of sexuality, because most people would not feel as though they have done wrong. But is that ignorance? I believe. Okay, I'm a heterosexual male, I have sinned in the area of sexuality. What is sin? Sin is redefining the purpose that God created me for. And specifically, you're raising the issue of sexuality. Well, I have redefined the purpose for which God gave me sexuality. I have lusted. And Christ says that's wrong. Why is that wrong? Because it's dehumanizing a woman who's created in the image of God. That is why I have to ask forgiveness for my sexual immorality, which happens to be heterosexual lust. But there are many different forms of sexual immorality. And if I've committed a sin, I need to be honest with myself, honest with God, and ask Him for forgiveness for the wrong that I have done. Does that make any sense? Makes sense. Yeah. What do you think about Christ? I don't have many thoughts about Christ. I am a member of another religion, which I'd probably rather not actually share because I feel like it invites judgment. But I think and you would disagree on where the line is between immorality sexually. I think people have other sexualities and they do espouse and experience love in maybe the way God created them to do. It's just slightly different, right? All right. First point, whatever religion you are, I have no option as a follower of Christ but to respect you. Whatever religion you are, as a follower of Christ, I have no option but to love you. Now, sir, if you are convinced that I'm going the wrong direction and you claim to love me, I hope you will inform me. Cliff, you're going in the wrong direction. Watch out. There's a crash at the end of this highway. Don't go there. So, because I respect you, I'm interested, genuinely interested in finding out what you believe and then asking you what's the evidence that whatever it is you believe is true. And then I hope you'll ask me, okay, Cliff, what do you believe? And what's the evidence that whatever it is you believe is true? Okay? See, I would argue that's respectful, intelligent discourse where we actually care for each other instead of just saying, well, I don't care what you believe. Does that make sense? Yeah. I've spent most of my life reading Buddhist philosophy. And I have absolutely no evidence that it's true. It's more me trying to come to terms with the concept of death, of nirvana being a true death. On some level, I hope that there is no afterlife, because this is hard, Okay? All I can say is thank you for your honesty and I respect you highly. Why? Because you started out by saying, I follow the Buddhist philosophy and I have no evidence that it's true. Man, I wish everybody was that stinking honest, sir. Instead, I got all these atheists standing out here saying, oh, I'm an atheist and that's the truth. And I'm saying, fine. So, what's the truth what's the evidence that your atheism is true? And sir, they keep on trying to act like, oh, because I've carefully thought this through. When in fact, it's just a knee-jerk emotional response. So, first of all, thank you for your honesty. Now, secondly, don't you think that before you trust, don't you think before I trust anybody, there should be evidence of reliability, not proof, but at least we got to have some evidence that we're not going to get ripped off. Okay? That this is true and reliable. I mean, don't you think that's wise in living your life? Come twice a week. Okay, so that's why I would plead with you, read the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama Buddha and ask yourself, what's the evidence that his teachings are true? And then I'm pleading with you, read the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke and John and ask yourself, what's the evidence that Jesus Christ is true? Compare and contrast. You see, sir, I'm standing here saying I've done a bit of studying of Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, and obviously I respect him for the way he struggled through the problem of suffering. I mean, anybody who claims to be a thinking, emotionally connected person who doesn't deal with suffering in this world, I think is out to lunch. There's too much suffering. So I respect Siddhartha Gautama Buddha for the way he really engaged the issue of suffering. But then there are other things he said that, I mean, how to deal with suffering. It's an illusion. What? Come on. Suffering is not an illusion. It's real. No. Very real. It has a cause. And they also believe there's a way out of it. You know, a way to more end it. Okay? How do you deal with suffering? How do you think it through? False. Well, I think it's on you to not create it through lust, desire, or, you know, selfishness. But theoretically, you know, if you follow the eightfold path, then you will move further up in the chain of reincarnation and eventually you get to die. And that's a privilege. Okay? So, right there, I've got, you know, some questions. Why is death a privilege? Because life is hard. Because life is hard. Okay? Now, from my perspective, you're right. Life is hard, I agree with that. But life is also a blast, oh yeah, and I'm real glad that you and I are able to have this conversation right now. I'm real glad that one of us is not dead. I celebrate life. And I think that if you look at your experience, you do celebrate life. That's why I have such a hard time accepting Buddhism, because I don't think that the goal is death. There's a lot of homies. Yeah, I mean, I think if you or I get hurt really badly, oh, yeah, we're going to get the ambulance, right? We're going to get the best doctor we can to keep us alive, right? We affirm life. All right, Jesus Christ affirms life like nobody else. He says, God gave you life. I'm the God who gave you life. I love you. I have a purpose for your life now, but I also have eternal life. And that's why I love 1 Corinthians 15, where Paul writes, death is the last enemy. It's not good. It's not cool. It's the last enemy because life is good in spite of the hardship that you and I experience. Is there any hardship in eternal life in heaven at all? Nope. Yeah, no hardship in heaven. Why? Because God is good. And because God is good, He guarantees there will be no hardship in heaven. Lots of hardship today in this life. No question about it. And I would think that because you are a sensitive, thoughtful guy, you would really take a hard look at Jesus because of the way He suffered. He didn't evade suffering, right? He got in with people who were suffering. He got down and dirty. And then He provides the ultimate solution for suffering, forgiveness and eternal life in heaven. Well, there will be no more suffering. And that's why when I go to a hospital and I sit beside the bed of a dying person, yes, I seek to hold that child's hand and comfort that child. But in Jesus Christ, I have a suffering God who provides the ultimate solution for suffering, forgiveness and eternal life in heaven. That make any sense? Yeah, definitely. Who defines sin and goodness and justice. And I would argue that if it's you who define it and or I who define it, then it is relative. And if He defines it His way and you define it your way and I define it my way, it is relative. And I'm convinced from looking at the abuse of an innocent child that there are some objective morals. And I dare say you would agree with that. Right. Okay. Well, if there are objective moral standards, there's got to be some type of mind prior to the human mind that creates and defines those standards. That would be God. Whoever God is, I can see that. You can see that. Okay? Good. Now, Jesus Christ claimed to be revealing this God, this intelligent mind, this just creator in a way that you and I as personal beings can connect with. Now, obviously, He's either full of it, an egomaniac, or else He's true. God revealing Himself in finite form in the person of Jesus Christ. And that's why I think it's so important for you to read the Gospels for yourself and ask yourself, does the evidence point to Christ being a quack? If it does, reject Him. Or does the evidence point to Christ being the truth? If it does, put your faith in Him. Does that make any sense? Yeah, definitely. Well, it's a real honor talking with you, sir, and thank you so much for your honesty and vulnerability. I appreciate that a lot.